First of all, shalom, everybody. My name is Elisa Moed, and I am the founder and CEO of Travaluia, as I think all of you know. We're in Israel, and the time now is 8 o'clock. We have not yet entered daylight savings time, but we will this Friday, right before, actually Friday at 2 a.m., right in the very early morning, before Passover, which is very customary here, and Passover starts on sundown Saturday night. Just briefly, for those of you who are joining for the first or second time, my company is Travaluia. It's been around for almost 14 years, and we're based in Israel. And we are the expert source on Holy Land travel. We've got about 1,000 pages of content that's refreshed constantly online on our Travaluia.com website, and a bi-weekly newsletter that covers the latest news in Israel and travel stories. And we organize private tours, church tours, private family tours, and the government legislators and federation tours and synagogue programs. And we do things for different organizations as well. And as you know, for the last year, we've been doing virtual tours since COVID started about a year ago. It's a milestone that I guess I never really thought we'd reach, but it has been a year since we started this first virtual tour. And actually, I think the very first one that we did was with David Nickrootman speaking about Passover and the 4 cups of wine. So I guess I never would have thought a year ago that we'd be doing this program again, but it's been quite a year for all of us. And I have to say, with that hardship and the challenge of obviously, personally not, my business totally stopping and being devastated by the fact that there's no more tours for the present, for the last 12 months, there have been so many silver linings. And certainly as we go into Passover, I am very, very thankful, as we go into the spring for the gifts actually that I've received over this last year. And most of that has really come from the people that have been coming week after week and who I've met through this program. And as much as this program has been teaching people about different places in Israel or this type of a study session, I have to say that I have learned a great deal from all of you who have been joining. So I just want to say that today, before we go into Passover, and to thank you all. As you know, before we always start these programs, I like to give a little bit of an Israel update. So just to briefly tell you what's been going on here this last week. First and foremost, our elections are coming up in about 48 hours. And it starts on Tuesday. We will not know on Tuesday night. This is totally not like the United States. Well, actually, this year you didn't know either for a few weeks or for several days at least. But here we will not know for probably at least 45 days and maybe another 28 days afterwards, because that's how long the system gives to putting together a coalition government. But at the present time, our surveys show that we're not really sure if a coalition will be able to get formed. So there may very well be another election at some point, but we will see. We will see if these parties can get together and form a government. The second thing is our update on COVID-19. So far, over 5.1 million Israelis have been vaccinated at least once, and over 4.2 million have actually been vaccinated twice. And certainly they're talking about over the next few weeks that our teens are going to be able to get vaccinated as well. So we are really approaching, some sort of herd immunity. Schools have reopened, and so have businesses and events. As I mentioned last week, you have all of us who've been vaccinated, you have like this electronic green card, which, 1 second, I'm going to letting somebody in, have like an electronic green card that they can use to get into events. So, and you can get into schools. I mean, schools have started, and many other restaurants you can go to and you can show your green card. So it really does have a feeling that life is kind of back to normal to some extent. In our airports, have not, at the current time, about 8,000 Israelis can come and travel each day. That's up from about 3,000 last week. So far, no foreigners are yet allowed in. And there has been no discussion really about when that might change. the prevailing thought is that they will wait and see how the Passover travel is. And I think one of the indicators that they're going to look at really is whether those that are vaccinated, they'll see any kind of an increase in infection amongst those who are vaccinated, because we'll be having people who are going to be traveling to all sorts of different countries probably over the next couple of weeks. And, right now the vaccine is about 95 to 97% effective. And if all of a sudden they see an increase in that percentage among people who are infected, then they'll have a sense that the vaccine may not be holding up as much as anticipated against these new variants. So I think there's a lot of study that's going to be going on over the next month, and then we'll have a clearer picture. But at this point, it really does feel that our lives here are kind of slowly getting back to normal. There's parties, there's weddings, and certainly the Passover families are planning to get together. We will not be in lockdown as we were last year. So, and finally, this week, Israelis are very busy, as I was discussing this with Walt earlier, cleaning their homes in preparation of Passover. In the US, we call it spring cleaning. I remember it very well. But here in Israel, we are ridding our homes of anything that's chometz, which means that it's bread, flour, etc. But it's just very customary to clean up every single room in your home and to change your dishes, unless you have the luxury of going on vacation to a fully kosher resort for the entire period, in which case people don't change anything. But if you were to go into the supermarkets here at this point, you would see that cleaning supplies are all on sale, new dishes are on sale, and silverware is all on sale, and pots and pans. So that's kind of like the atmosphere that we have here. So on to today's program, which is about Passover and spring and renewal and remembering the journey of the Israelites coming through the desert. We are going to really be focusing on the study of the 4 cups of wine. It's a very special learning session, certainly not the virtual tour like we've done in the past, but really to focus on the theology and to really try to understand why it is that we had these 4 cups of redemption. And our featured speaker is David Nickrootman. David is the executive director of the Center for Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation, which is based in Jerusalem and Efrat. David, well, what can I say? David is an amazing friend. I met David 14 years ago when I first moved to Israel. We both made Aliyah very close, like I think within a year of each other. I've been here 15 years. I think David's been here pretty close to the same period of time. I was doing some work for the Catholic Church. He had just started at the CJCUC after being with the Israeli embassy in New York, I believe, for a period of time. And we started working very closely together. We had a lot of common interests in Jewish Christian relations, and have over the years developed a lot of different programming that explores the Jewish roots of Christianity. And he's just been an incredible teacher, friend, colleague, and so much of what I do in tourism, I often, go to David and get his insight on different kind of programming aspects. I brought him into Shabbat dinners. I think there's a couple of people on this program tonight who have had the luxury of having David attend one of their Shabbat dinners or speaks in a hotel. And we work together to develop a Women of Valor program as well that brings women leaders to Israel in the footsteps of the biblical women. And hopefully, David, when this pandemic is behind us, we'll have a lot more programs that we'll be working on together. He's got a lovely wife, Kalani, and amazing children. And I am thrilled that you joined us tonight, David. Thank you. And good luck.
Thank you, Elisa.
Yeah.
This is great. Wow. You set up the stage really high. I will not try to violate the 11th commandment. I shall not disappoint you. So with that, we begin with Exodus chapter 12, verse 38. I think many people think that the whole Passover celebration really is a VIP exclusive club with the Jewish people. But if you look at Exodus chapter 12, verse 38, you'll see there's a mixed multitude that comes out with the Jewish people. And the mixed multitude is a gathering of people who are part of the Egyptian royalty, people who are slaves other than the Jews, people who intermarried within the children of Israel. You have different groups of people who are. So therefore, what I want to say is the purpose for what God was doing in Egypt is for everybody in Egypt and the empire and the civilization at that time was to see the glory of God. So if you're here to see the glory of God and you decided freely to anchor your destiny with the Jewish people, then you merited to go out with the Jewish people. And so I just want to say that Passover, realizing that this is a celebration of God, not only the creator, but God of Redeemer and a redemptive moment in Jewish history for the Jewish people, that really is the foundation for why we do what we do and all the mandates that we are commanded by God to sanctify him and to be holy. And so therefore, for Christians who actually believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and have Hebrew scripture that's part of their canon, even more so. So I just want to say from my perspective as a Jew involved in almost 20 years in Jewish-Christian relations, I know that Passover Seder was a way for Jews to extend the hand of friendship to Christians to come in, but I want to take this one step further. And if you want to know where I'm going with this whole thing, I'm going to advocate not about 4 cups of wine, but a 5th cup. And I'm going to ask you to consider this coming Saturday night, when all the Jews around the world are celebrating, and if indeed you are celebrating some type of Passover Seder, that instead of drinking 4 cups of wine, I want you to also drink a 5th cup. And we'll go into that 5th cup concept, and also to delve into Joshua chapter 24. It's going to be a pivotal piece to understand why there should be a 5th cup. All right, so at least I'm assuming I can share with my other screen. So
I think I have the right David as co-host.
Yeah, so you see right now a PowerPoint that says Cups of Redemption?
Not yet. Now we do.
Now you do. Perfect. Excellent. So we're going to go through this. I'm going to take you step by step. We're trying to accomplish a few things on Passover evening. Number one is to actually relate the miracles and the wonders made for our ancestors in Egypt. And there's a verse that backs that up. Exodus chapter 13, verse 3. Remember this day on which you left Egypt. So that's number one. Number two, we are supposed to tell our children about the story of Exodus. And there's a verse behind that, Exodus chapter 13, verse 8. You shall tell your son. It's very important that you can't outsource faith. Faith begins in the covenant home. So I always, when I'm preaching all over the United States right now, and I'm talking about the thing of Passover, I'm asking Christians to really begin, to put their kids into Christian schools and don't somehow outsource all of this. Even outsourcing your faith to a Sunday service or a Sunday afternoon for the kids or ministry for kids. Really, we are supposed to be educators on behalf of God, and we always start with the home. So one of the things that we're doing on the Passover evening is creating the theater, creating the ambiance that the children should be interested the entire time to learn. And therefore, there are going to be elements that are coming throughout the Passover meal to help the children stay up and listen to the story. In addition to relating the miracles and telling the story to our kids, we have 3 main things of what we call the Paschal Sacrifice. So during temple times, this would be shawarma in a pita that was baked less than 18 minutes. The only Jewish group today that actually has a pita at their Passover meal that's not leavened, that's unleavened bread, is Yemenites. I know that because my wife is Yemenite, and when I was dating her, it's going to be almost 24 years ago. So what happened was I came to their Passover and I saw pita bread, and I was like, heathens, how can they go ahead and have pita? But they do. And the reason it makes more sense that there is actually pita bread, because you're supposed to create a sandwich. So if you go into Israel and you got a shawarma, you usually got an alafa, which is a big gigantic piece of pita bread, and you stuck shawarma in it. It's a sandwich. So you can't do that too much with the matzahs that we have today, produced in your supermarkets, or sold in your supermarkets. Those are cardboard pieces of, I don't know what you call them, but it's called matzah for some reason. But real matzah goes back to really being unleavened bread that looks like a pita. So it was like a barbecue. Passover meal was like a barbecue. You had the whole purpose was everyone eating from the Paschal lamb, but unfortunately we don't have the temple. So what we do is we put a shank bone as a remembrance of what was, and we relate to what that whole ritual is about. In addition, we have the bitter herbs, which were supposed to taste the slavery of what Egypt was about, and the matzah, remembering as we were rushing out from Egypt, we didn't have time to bake regular bread. All we had was the matzah. Those three elements are essential to the Passover evening. And last but not least, but probably the most important of it, I have to feel that I went through servitude and came out of Egypt. That means next Saturday, I'm not remembering what my ancestors went through. I am going through it. It's an actual event. So again, the theater of what we're doing and the script that we have called the Haggadah, the liturgy, is all in trying to make this feeling that I have gone through slavery and been redeemed by God, as well as keeping our kids up, our young kids up, and telling them about the story. Any questions thus far from anybody? If you can always interrupt me, I'm okay with that. Okay, so everyone seems to be good. So what we
If
have,
you have
Judy,
questions, you can just write them in the chat
you
too.
can write
and I
them in the
can
chat,
answer.
and then I will rely on Elisa Moe to
I will
let me know if there's a question I should be answering. But if you are silent, that means you understand in Judaism. Just to let you know, that's a general rule. Okay, there we go. Haggadah. What is the term Haggadah? Relate, tell, expound. What you have in the picture over there is a 1955 Maxwell House coffee Haggadah. And I remember growing up, not in 1955, but going to Waldbaum's and picking up Passover goods. And it was Maxwell House Coffee that gave out the Haggadah. This is just some things to keep you up if you're decaffeinated. That's it. So there we go. Jonathan Sachs, of blessed memory, unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year. I think he has one of the best commentaries on the Haggadah. And one of the things that's very interesting that he points out is that what's the difference between the Jews and other nations? Every other nation has been united because its members lived in the same place, spoke the same language, and were part of the same culture. Whereas Jews were dispersed across the four corners of the world, speaking different languages, participating in different cultures, but we all have been bound by one narrative, and that is the Passover narrative, which is going to happen this Saturday night. So more than the Haggadah was the story of a people, Jews were part of the story. We are the ones who originally came up with the concept that not only is there going to be a full redemption, that we ourselves are part of that redemptive process. So I don't care how unaffiliated a Jew is, if a Jew is identifying as a Jew, one of two major celebrations that a Jew would do is the Passover, along with Hanukkah. Those are the two major events that most unaffiliated Jews would even identify in doing. Now, give you some other trivia in case you're going to a Jewish household next Saturday night and you want to celebrate. You can go ahead and test them. In 1482, we have the first printed Haggadah. We have 4,000 Haggadot, that's plural for Haggadah. Editions printed, over 100 English translation, and the first English translation was in 1787. What you're seeing in front of you on your left-hand side was for the German-Spanish community living in London. And then you have another one over here as well. So you're seeing some history here with the Haggadah. Here we thank the 3rd U.S. Army, 3rd Unit of the U.S. Army, who published what we call the Survivors Haggadah. You can actually find this in the United States Memorial Museum in D.C. These were for the people who were liberated from Auschwitz, and the army that liberated also were the ones who commissioned a Haggadah. For them, you can, just to let you know, there's a famous line in the Haggadah, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And as you can tell on top over here on the right-hand side, it says we were slaves to Hitler in Germany. The couple with the kid is is a family that is coming out from the smokestacks of Auschwitz. The point of this is you have survivors who went through a major, what we would call crucifixion of the Jewish people, but yet willing to celebrate the freedom of what it means to be Jewish and to live as a Jew. However, their connection was a very deep connection for what they went through. So a lot of the survivors Haggadah has a lot of depictions of what was happening in the Holocaust. So their contemporary experience gave them more of an understanding of what happened to their ancestors. Just a sort of a little thing you should know about. I just want to thank the United States Army for publishing something like this. So I'm not going to go to every single aspect of what is going on with the different elements of the Haggadah, the Passover meal. I want to simply focus on the 4 cups of wine, which pops up periodically during the evening. And reason number 1 for the 4 cups of wine, it is based on Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 through 7. I just want to make a clarification where it says, I am the eternal, I will take, it means I made a mistake. It means I will bring out you from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will save you from the labor. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm with great judgments, and I will take you to me as a people, and I will be a God to you, and you will know that I am the eternal, your God, who brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. Those things that are bolded, again, I just want to, I made a mistake. The first bold, I will take, means it's actually I will bring out. So those 4 expressions are 4 expressions of redemption. For the 4 expressions of redemption, we have the 4 cups of wine. This is the mainstream understanding of why we have 4 cups of wine. However, there are other reasons for it. Reason number 2 is really to when Joseph was interpreting the cupbearer's dream in Genesis chapter 40, verse 11 and verse 13, it's in the context of cups. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will number you with other officers and will store you to position, and you will be placed in Pharaoh's cup into his hand, according to your previous custom when you were his cupbearer. So here we have 4 cups mentioned in the story of Joseph interpreting the cupbearer's dream. So let's just give some context behind that. If you remember, Joseph was sold to the Egyptians when his brothers tried to attempt to take him out, when he was interpreting their dreams, and they didn't like him, and they decided they had enough of this guy who was dreaming too much. Instead of killing him, they sold him. He ends up in Potiphar's house. He gets falsely accused of committing adultery, ends up in prison, and then one day the cupbearer relays his dream. If you remember at the end of that story, Joseph tells the cupbearer, remember me when you are restored. And it took some time, took a nightmare from Pharaoh for the cupbearer to remember, hey, I know a guy who might help you. And that was Joseph. So here we are, we have in this particular narrative of Joseph, 4 cups. And what we're learning from this is that these 4 cups that Joseph is talking about, literally, this begins the servitude of the Jewish people. If you want to have a mark, when is the beginning, everything starting, it starts when Joseph interprets the dream in the dungeon. Based upon these four cups mentioned in scripture, which you really could have just said 1 cup, and you could have made the narrative a little shorter, since it's longer and it's emphasizing things on cups, there's a Jewish hermeneutic. When something is redundant, then it's an opportunity to excavate revelation. Part of the revelation here is, why is there 4 cups? So we learn a Jewish law aspect of this, that we should have 4 cups at the Passover meal. I want to make sure that's all clear. If anyone has any questions on this, you can put it in the chat and at least you can let me know. So just to recap, first reason is Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 through 7 for redemptive expressions. The second reason is the 4 cups mentioned in the interpretation of Joseph for the cupbearer's dream. Reason number 3 has to deal with how Jews are experiencing their exile. And they mention 4 exiles: the Babylon, Persian, the Greece, and Rome. And these are the 4 kingdoms that rule over the land of Israel that result in the exile of the Jewish people. Realize this: you do not have Egypt in this. This is about exiling the Jewish people from the land of Israel. And that's what's most important. So it's relating to these different kingdoms that cause our being driven out from the land or under their sovereignty. You can still be considered in exile when living in the land if the land is operated and governed by a foreign entity. So that's reason number 3. And last but not least, we have reason number 4. And this is about revenge. This is a revenge perspective. It corresponds to the 4 punishments that God will pour upon the nations of the world in the future. So anyone that started up with the Jewish people as a nation, payback is in this perspective. And here are the 4 verses that relate to cups and relate to God pouring out his wrath to the nations. So we have one from Jeremiah 25:15, from Jeremiah 51:7, from Psalm 75:9, and from Psalms 11:6. So you will see highlighted in the PowerPoint this word again, kos, which means cup. So let's recap again. We have 4 expressions of redemption in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 through 7. We have the concept of relating to the cupbearer's dream and Joseph, and that's the beginning of what we consider servitude. Then we have the 4 kingdoms that ruled over Israel and pushed us out from the land or governed us in the land. And then we have the wrath concept. The mainstream concept, if you ask anybody educated in the whole understanding of what we're doing on Passover evening, the mainstream thing is really the 4 expressions of redemption. And that's what I want to sort of bring out the message of today. So let's recap. We have 4 expressions on Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 through 7. I will bring out, not I will take, I will save, I will redeem, and then I will take. Those are the 4 things. However, we are missing the whole point of these 4 redemptive expressions because it's supposed to lead up to Exodus chapter 6, verse 8, which means I will bring you to the land concerning which I raised my hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give you as a heritage. I am the Lord. So there's one thing about being free from, but that freedom must bring you to a freedom too. Freedom does not mean that you can do whatever you want. Freedom means I am no longer under humanity's tyranny. I am under God's freedom. So what I want to bring out from this today, before we go a little further, deeper into this concept, is that the Haggadah that we read from today is an exile perspective Haggadah service. It is all from the period after the temple was destroyed until now. And if one examines, you can go online, you can Google, you'll see the liturgy. Most of what the narrative is all from post-Second Temple destruction. And it's very understandable that if you're in exile, it's very hard to understand redemption. A prisoner never will have the key to open up the door to the prison cell. Sometimes you need an outsider to get the key to open up the prison cell for you to understand what freedom is about. So I believe, and Lisa believes, we have returned back to the land of Israel. We are now in the first flowering of our redemptive history. What the prophets envisioned, we are experiencing in the land of Israel. When you come to the land of Israel, you are also part of that fulfillment of biblical prophecy. No other time in history do you have something to this extent. So what I want to say is we need to begin looking at Passover no longer from exile eyes, but now from redemptive eyes. And therefore, there's a 5th expression. The fifth expression is, I will bring you. And since God has brought us, and Jews now have the opportunity just to hop on a plane and make Aliyah, we are now in a different season, out of exile, really into over 70 years of redemptive history being fulfilled in front of us. Therefore, I'm going to suggest that instead of 4 cups of wine, there is a 5th cup. And I'm asking you, Christians out there, if you're celebrating this, if you want to get us a little jealous, this would be a good opportunity to say, I'm going to drink a 5th cup of wine. Because I believe that the state of Israel in its current capacity is part of the redemptive history. So I have already instituted in my own Passover a 5th cup, and now we'll go a little deeper. But before I go deeper, just want to make sure, does anyone need clarification? I'm going to rely on Elisa Moed on this. Anyone?
Yeah. There's a couple of comments here from Brenda. From Malcolm. The third reason about the 4 kingdoms that ruled over Israel after Israel had escaped from Egypt seems a bit of a stretch. Passover is all about escape from Egypt, right? Angel of the Lord passing over the homes and not killing the firstborn, or am I wrong?
Very good. So that's an excellent question. So biblically speaking, there's no mandate to drink 4 cups of wine. It was instituted by the rabbis. The question is why the rabbis instituted 4 cups of wine. Biblically speaking is what we spoke about in one of the first slides. I'll go back really quickly. Those are the main aspects of Passover, and that is pretty much biblical. And I've given you biblical verses. But in all those 4 categories I've given you about what Passover is about, you will not see in the text of the Bible anything relating to 4 cups of wine. So the 4 cups of wine is very much a rabbinic institution. And the question is, why was there a rabbinic institution of 4 cups? And we're trying to figure that out. So is it based upon 4 expressions as stated in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 through 7? Is it based upon an exile understanding of what this is all about? Hold on one second. I apologize. Okay. Somehow my other phone went off. Okay, turn that off. Okay. Is it because of the cupbearer's dream, which began this whole servitude to begin with, or is it because eventually God will pour out his wrath, and so it's the vengeance of blood of the Jewish people from the other nations? So hopefully that clarifies as far as the Passover is concerned with the 4 cups of wine, and it has nothing to do with particularly a biblical institution. It's a rabbinic institution. Anyone else, Elisa? Or we're still,
No,
we continue?
we're good.
Good? Okay, yeah. Great. So now we're going to continue. So people might say, but David, very nice. It's great that you might be instituting this, but who are you? And I would say, you're right, I am nothing. But I have a source. It comes from the Talmud, which Jews take very seriously. So in the Talmud, it does say that there's an opinion. When we say the great Hallel, Psalm 136, which is said after the meal, we have a 5th cup. And others say there was Psalm 23, and that's recited, and that's when you drink the 5th cup. Let me just break this down. Again, we have a script called the Haggadah. There's a lot of liturgy, but one of the liturgies that we have, 2 of the liturgies that we have is Psalm 113 to 118, which is known as Hallel, and Psalm 136, which is known as the Great Hallel. We know for sure that those 2 liturgies were invoked during the time of the Second Temple's existence and continued after the Second Temple. A lot of the other liturgy that's in that script of what's called the Haggadah is very much post-Second Temple destruction. So, according to one opinion, when we're saying the Great Hallel, that's when the 5th cup is going to be drunk. And everyone else, some others will say Psalm 23. You should just know Psalm 23 is not is not part of the Haggadah. So this should show you that the Haggadah was in development. Some people had a text where you had Psalm 23 and some people didn't, depending upon custom. The Haggadah is a development in Jewish history after the Second Temple was destroyed. Point of it is that I have a source that shows there was a fifth cup. And there might be some saying here today who know the secret archives of the Jewish people, who received that key and opened up and said, isn't the cup of Elijah the fifth cup? And my answer to that is the cup of Elijah might look like it's a fifth cup, but it's not a fifth cup. The cup of Elijah is a cup of Elijah. No one drinks from the cup of Elijah, only Elijah. Part of what we say in our Passover after the meal is we open up the door for Elijah to come in, which is a very late date custom in Judaism. And the point is that Elijah gets to see how the Jewish people are celebrating Passover. Elijah, at one point during his time on earth, said some nasty things about the Jewish people. And God always reminds Elijah that, hey, it's not as bad as you think it is. The Jewish people are keeping a lot of things part of the covenant. One is the circumcision. So we believe that Elijah is part of every boy's circumcision, and also part of the Passover Seder. But it's not a fifth cup. It's the cup of Elijah. When I'm talking about a fifth cup, I'm talking about a fifth cup that you have to drink. So just like we have 4 cups that you have to drink, the fifth cup also should be drunk. So the question is, why am I saying this? And I'm going to look at 2 liturgies in the Haggadah, which we say, but the emphasis seems to be on this liturgy first. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the eternal our God took us out from there with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm. If the Holy One, blessed be, had not taken our fathers out from Egypt, then we, our children, and our children's children would have remained enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Even if all of us were wise, all of us understanding, all of us knowing the Torah, we would still be obligated to discuss the Exodus from Egypt. Everyone who discusses the Exodus from Egypt at length is praiseworthy. So from here, we have a text, and this text actually gives us the whole concept of Haggadah, that we need to discuss what happened in Egypt, discuss the Exodus. And that's how Haggadah was formed, from this text. But what you see from here is that the emphasis is a freedom from. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And primarily, through exile, we were focusing a freedom from. But there's another liturgy that we say in the Haggadah that I don't think many Jews even pay attention to. I may be mistaken. I'll try to give the benefit of the doubt. But it's a very short text. In the beginning, our father served idols. But now the Holy One, for he has brought us close to his service, as it said, Joshua said to all the people, thus said the Eternal, the God of Israel, your fathers used to live on the other side of the river. Terach, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachar, and they serve other gods. Joshua chapter 24, verse 2. Now I could say this, even as a child, I ran through this text. But this text is essentially very important for a redemptive perspective on the Passover. It's referencing a very important part in Jewish history that we don't take really in consideration. Joshua, the descendant of Joseph, in the place that he was sold as a slave, is now united with his brothers in the place where he was sold. This should really be a major moment in Jewish history. In the place where the brothers wanted to kill Joseph, eventually was sold to Egypt, Joshua is bringing the people into Israel, and he's talking about our renewal of our covenantal commitment to God. That's what's happening in Joshua chapter 24, but it's happening in Israel with the children of Israel at a site that needed reconciliation. How much more can you be in redemption than that moment with Joshua? And for me, this becomes the redemptive perspective on how to look at Passover this coming Saturday night. Yes, it's a freedom from, but it's a freedom to. And the way to do that is united and doing reconciliation and making sure that there's no more baseless hatred between humanity, and making sure that what we're doing in the land of Israel is an upkeep and upholding God's covenant in the land. So this is from the Haggadah itself, that there is a freedom to perspective, a redemption, a land perspective. I will even go further than that. One more. Well, David, you're very nice, but you're not a rabbi. I agree, I'm not a rabbi. And I'm just a simple Bible teacher trying to make the bridge between Jews and Christians. But I rely on somebody before me who was born in 1895 in Warsaw. His name is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Kasher. He is actually celebrated in Israel. He's done tremendous amount of work. He did 33 volumes of an encyclopedia of taking everything in the Talmud and the Midrash, rabbinic literature, and really a scholar and a very religious person. And he wanted the rabbinate to institute officially in the state of Israel a fifth cup at the Passover. And unfortunately, the chief rabbinate at the time missed an opportunity to listen to Rabbi Kasher. So, in his Haggadah, in his own Haggadah, you can read this as I talk about this, but he gives the basis of why we should be doing this. And the answer very simply is, you have to acknowledge the miracle that's in front of you. And the miracle in front of us is that the Jewish people have sovereignty over the land. And therefore, Exodus chapter 6, verse 8 is being fulfilled. It becomes our duty then to acknowledge that in an element of the Passover that's very significant. And that is called the fifth cup of wine. So this is continuous. You can read a little bit as this, but this is, I think my time is up, right? My time is almost up, Elisa Moyen.
You've got about 15 more minutes, David.
15 more minutes.
Yeah.
So
But
I want
to go to questions.
if there's, just before I make a conclusion, just if there's any clarifications, if anyone needs any clarifications, please let me know. If not, I'll just go straight to the conclusion. Let me make this very clear. I started off that in Exodus chapter 12, verse 38, there was a mixed multitude that went out with the nation of Israel. That the redemption was both for the children of Israel as covenantally promised, but the point of the Exodus was for people to acknowledge the God of redemption and the God of creation. In Exodus chapter 16, in the manna episode, you will see towards the end of the manna episode that you had the children of Israel and the mixed multitude, but they rested on the Sabbath as a nation. They became a nation prior to Exodus chapter 20, before the Mosaic law. There was a moment in history before Sinai that non-Jews and Jews became one. That carries over into Isaiah itself, Isaiah 56, 1 through 7. Now, verse 7, I know I've heard many sermons on verse 7. My house will be a house of prayer for all nations. But the context of Isaiah 56 is Isaiah saw something phenomenal happening in his lifetime during the evil reign of King Manasseh, that there were pagans leaving their heathen practices behind and anchoring their faith with the Jewish people. There was, at that particular point in time, no formal conversion that we know that's listed during First Temple period. These were people who were eunuchs who served as royalty in people of different various kingdoms, who said, I see something special about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And one of the markers that showed their affirmation of their faith was the keeping of the Sabbath. So my house of prayer, for the prayer will be a house for all nations, is in the context of non-Jews leaving their pagan ways to then believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And at the end of Isaiah 66, chapter 23, this is the second to the last verse, Isaiah envisions a moment where the entire world will be celebrating the new moon to new moon, meaning the biblical holidays and the Sabbath. Isaiah 66 is a very important a prophet reading, because when the Hebrew new moon falls out on the Sabbath, we read that prophet reading on Shabbat. That means that Isaiah becomes our universal prophet. But the universal prophet in Isaiah 56 changes the status quo and allows people who wish to anchor their destiny with the Jewish people simply through their faith to come along in the community of Israel. And here Isaiah sees a vision before he closes off his book and sees that the world will be celebrating him. So therefore, I say, why wait for the messianic moment of its complete fulfillment? Why don't we begin to start now? So I see that the opportunity next Saturday is a start of looking at Passover from redemptive eyes, not solely from exile eyes. And a way to affirm that is drinking a fifth cup of wine and studying chapter 24 in the book of Joshua. And we all say amen. Okay.
Amen.
Any questions?
Okay, so let's get started. I'm sure there might be some questions here. You can unmute yourselves. Walter, it looks like you're getting close to the microphone. Do you have a question? Don't hear you. I'm gonna ask Walter.
I was thinking he might tie this in with Jesus's Last Supper. He didn't hear me.
Did you hear him, David?
I can't hear him. Something about the Last Supper.
Tying it into Jesus's to the Last Supper.
Right.
Somehow tying in the wine and redemption.
Because Jesus celebrated 3 of the 4 cups over Passover when he did the Passover Last Supper.
Hold on one second. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I understand why from a Christian perspective and why you're celebrating Passover from a Jesus point of view. And I'm not taking that away. What I'm saying to you that we see already in the Passover itself prior to Jesus, that I don't see any problem for you to celebrate. If you wish to take on another dimension because of your own faith, okay, that's fine. But what I'm trying to give you is a Jewish perspective on how Jews celebrate Passover next week through its Haggadah, through its own liturgy. I'm fully aware of Christians celebrating Passover through their own messianic Haggadah, which has a different text than the text that we celebrate with next week. So what some people may be doing here in the Passover coming up next Saturday, you will, if you're not using the mainstream of Jewish Haggadot, then obviously you have a different text. So for me, I can't speak to the Haggadah text of what you're celebrating on for next week. What I could just say from our perspective, and how see the unfolding redemptive history, I'm giving you a perspective that goes beyond simply what we're reading, but an in-depth understanding of redemption that incorporates people like yourself who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and wish to join us in celebrating that redemptive moment in Egypt. That doesn't take away of how you see the redemptive moment in human history vis-a-vis Jesus. But I'm an Orthodox Jew, and therefore I'm just speaking from a Jewish point of view. So I want to make that very clear. Hopefully that helps and clarifies.
One of the challenges that I see for Christianity is not understanding the Haggadah better than we do.
Okay.
Because most people don't understand, have never celebrated a Seder supper.
Okay.
And until you go through that supper and see what you folks do as part of the Haggadah, we don't have a good understanding of why it is so important that we understand why you do this.
So my hope was that this whole entire talk would say, I can't be who I am as a Jew without being in the land itself and in partnership with you. The greatest fulfillment and actualization of what it means to be a Jew is redemptive history, which means I have to be a good steward in the land in partnership with the nations. If I'm supposed to be a light unto the nations as a nation, then I have to have partnerships with the nations that are willing to receive this light. This doesn't mean I'm better than you. It just means the responsibility as a nation in a geographic location is on our shoulders. Just like you're trying to make a city on the hill, wherever you are in your own geographic location, God did choose a place, did choose a people, that people belong in that place, and the full actualization of the Constitution, called the Book of Deuteronomy, can only be fulfilled with its people in its land. Unfortunately, our sins drove us out from the land. But thank God, we are living in a moment where we are returning, not based upon my own deeds or my father's deeds, based upon God's grace and mercy. We are back in the land. This grace and mercy moment that we're sharing together, for me, is part of redemptive history. So I just want to share from my perspective that there should be an openness to anyone who wishes to join us on Passover, because there was a redemption also for those who were in Egypt, who were not part of the family, the children of Israel. That's the best I can do. I can just be me for this moment to bridge this moment, this sanctified moment with you.
David Mal has a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if there's a typo here because I don't quite understand it. Pardon my ignorance, Mal. Was kasher? Is that the word kasher?
Yeah, Paschal is his last name. The
Was
rabbi.
kasher referring to the seven act? Oops, just was kasher referring to the seven Axis nations as the seven nations united to destroy and annihilate the Jewish people? Yeah.
Elisa, I'll jump in.
Yeah, please.
I was reading the screen from Rabbi Kasher, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And about a third of the way down, there was a reference to 7 nations that had united to destroy and annihilate the Jewish state. So I thought perhaps he was writing that during, right after World War II, because he lived until 1983. So I thought maybe he was referring to that.
Paschal was actually he was advocating this when the state of Israel was established. So he is writing at a time of right when the Holocaust took place. Obviously, his perspective in writing this is affected by the most horrible act for the Jewish people in history. So he's definitely writing from that. But at the end of what he's trying to do is institute something that was lost in Jewish custom and trying to institute it from a Jewish perspective. And I'm saying, I'm borrowing from this rabbi, and I'm saying, you too, who wish to be part of our Passover Seder, I'm asking if you believe that the state of Israel is in part of the redemptive process. One way to acknowledge that in an element of Passover is drink the 5th cup of wine with me. Come and study Joshua chapter 24. Renew our covenantal commitment to God. So I'm trying to advocate more of a redemptive understanding of Passover than an exile understanding of Passover, which is up until this point pretty much what Jews anyway do.
Yeah, I would say that from a Christian point of view, the redemptive part of Passover has much greater appeal than the other elements of Passover.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We have solved Jewish-Christian relations in less than an hour, early Samoa. This is amazing.
The record. That's a record.
For the record.
Well, first of all, while you're all thinking about your questions, I want to tell you that here in Israel, and I'm sure also in the States where you are, David, it is very traditional that right before the holiday, we get together and we have, like we do at Rosh Hashanah, we raise a glass to the new year because actually this is also our new year. Maybe you can explain that, David, how Passover, we have so many new years, but
We have four
Passover is
new
also a
years.
new year.
Yeah, we have 4 new years in the Jewish calendar, but if you look at biblical history, you will find out that the year of freedom is the first year of the Jewish calendar. And that begins in the Hebrew month of Nisan. And obviously in the middle of the Hebrew month of Nisan, we celebrate Passover. The other famous new year is the birth of humanity, and that's Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, followed by the Day of Atonement, then followed by the Feast of Tabernacles. These are all universal holidays. We believe that everyone should take on the kingship of God. Every nation and every individual should reflect of whether or not they're living a covenantal lifestyle with God. Whatever we fall short of the glory, we should figure out why and rectify. And then we are in the tabernacle of God's presence during the Feast of Tabernacle. And there it's all joyous holiday. That we understand these are universal holidays, but it's all based upon the birth of humanity. What we're celebrating right now is freedom.
Mhm. Well, what is also goes hand in hand with us every year at these major holidays that we have is that it's traditional for us to raise a glass of wine, not one of the 4 cups or one of the 5 cups, but just a separate cup to rejoice and to reflect and to wish everybody
Or grape juice.
Grape juice, Happy New Year. So I would like to, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, really thank all of you. Many of you have been with us for the last year, and many of you are new over the last few weeks. And I want to wish you all a very happy and happy Passover feast holiday. And to again thank you all for your friendship, for teaching me as well, and for supporting our efforts. I know everybody has a lot to do, and the fact that you've made time for this and have found value in this, means an awful lot to me. Obviously to David and Itamar, who unfortunately could not join us tonight, but also sends his wishes. So I just want to say l'chaim to all of you. I guess you can see this glass of wine, so l'chaim, and so thank you. And again, I also want to encourage if anybody would like to leave a tip, it's paypal.me/Travaluia. Obviously supports our efforts and those of our speakers, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We are not going to be having a session next week because of Passover. Next Sunday. Actually, our holiday starts Saturday night and ends on Sunday, and the time change just makes it a little bit too close. So we will take a little bit of a break, but we have a program the following week on which is Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday, on about the last days of Jesus. And I do hope that you will join that virtual tour. And we are also probably going to be having something at midweek that week, Jerusalem through the lens of food, culture, and Easter on, I believe on Wednesday. So a little special extra that you can check on the calendar, and I'll send it off to all of you. So hopefully you'll join those as well. And again, I just want to thank you all for joining. Are there any last questions before we say goodnight to David, who's in the United States right now?
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah. I guess good night to me.
Excellent. So I really appreciate the opportunity. God bless. Happy Passover and happy Easter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, say hello to Marcia. We missed her.
Here's Marcia.
Oh, I didn't see her. Hello. And Svetlana, it was great to see you. Not always there.
I'm sorry, Malcolm didn't want to unmute me. So
He doesn't always let you talk, huh?
yeah, I was trying to control the microphone.
Nice to see you too. It's just, all this seeing you just brought back that memory of the greatest trip of my life.
Yeah, the tour we did with you in 2016.
Yeah, that was a really special tour. That'd be great if you guys can come back again. I'd love to see this whole group come together. It would be such a mix, because people really do come from so many different backgrounds. And this is not a universal group by any stretch from the conversations that I've had.
Can you guys see this? This is a Maxwell House coffee Passover Haggadah.
But you have one.
Yeah, we got one.
Yeah, I have 4 of them, and 3 of them are English and Hebrew, and 1 of them is Russian and Hebrew.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
You're good. Are you having a Seder somewhere?
Yeah, well, not a real Seder, but sort of.
A wannabe Seder.
Yeah, a wannabe Seder.
Okay, well, they all work. Everybody. Look, I don't think there's any 2 Seders that are alike. I just got an assignment for our Seder. And it was if you're curious, because we're 3 families that are getting together. And the assignment is that this year we're doing a Seder different from all other Seders. The play on this night is different. Each of you will choose a minor character from the Haggadah or the Torah's Exodus story for your character. Describe their important characteristics. What does the person add to our belief or morals, and what can we learn from that person? It may be the same character chosen by more than one person. Everyone will have a different viewpoint. Looking forward to a stimulating, fun retelling of our people being liberated from slavery. But it's interesting because we really don't spend so much time talking about, we do, not within the context of Haggadah talking about redemption, but certainly within the context of, what does this all mean today? And I think, this year, essentially, I think we all feel like we've been redeemed to some extent, at least from the vaccine.
We survived.
Yeah.
I thought the question was really good, although it's not exactly what David's topic was today, about the connection between the celebration of the Passover and the Last Supper of Jesus, because most scholars, well, it's not most scholars, it's the New Testament says that Jesus had gathered with the disciples to celebrate the Passover.
Yep.
I know there is some scholarly debate because of a conflict between the Gospel of John and the 3 other Gospels about whether the gathering was taking place, I guess, the night that the Passover began, or was it taking place the night before the night that Passover began? I can't begin to explain that. But anyway, that was not today's topic, but that's kind of where the 2 faiths really intersect at that point for 2 high holidays of Passover and Easter.
Yep. No, absolutely. Mount Zion, I think every year at Easter, I get more hits on the Last Supper article than I get, any other article for there's a 2-year, what did Jesus eat at the Last Supper? It's obviously it's a very, it's a story that very much resonates, and it definitely coincide. But we coincide on so many different holidays for all sorts of reasons.
But the loneliness, I am sure that a lot of people would be happy.
Who's that? Oh, I think that's Stephanie and Larry. Yeah.
I've seized control of the microphone again.
Okay, that's good. It's all good. Now that this starting in 1 hour early, the 6-hour time difference, I feel so much more energetic.
Yeah, right. I keep forgetting about that 7-hour time difference. Yeah. So you start this coming Saturday is when daylight savings time starts?
Yeah, actually it's early morning Friday at 2 a.m. Just in
2 a.m. Friday.
Right. So what happens is that Passover the Seder doesn't really get started till 8:30. It's late. It's a very late night.
Yeah.
But we'll have fun.
It's hard for the kids.
Well,
Children.
I
To be
just
so
read,
late.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Raise your hand.
I just read in Haggadah that in Israel, you only celebrate one Seder, but in diaspora, 2 Seders.
Exactly, that's right, because they say because in ancient times, they didn't really know when the actual holiday was to begin, because of the way that news, would travel, and somehow we didn't know the exact time, so they had to celebrate 2 days of the holiday up front. And obviously, if you were living in the land, everything is timed to coincide with Israel. So you only had to celebrate the holiday. It was only last 1 day here, and that's the same. The same is true with like Sukkot. There's 2 holidays up front, when the Feast of Tabernacles in October or September, whenever it falls, and it runs for 2 days. But in Israel, it only runs for 1 day. So if you live outside of Israel in the diaspora, you're supposed to celebrate 2 days of holiday at the beginning and also at the end, so that somewhere in there you're catching the holiday. What gets tricky is that there are people who travel here for the holidays, and some people will travel here for the holidays and say, well, I'm in Israel, I should only have to celebrate it once, and I can be like an Israeli. But there are rabbis who say, well, if that is not your home and you're traveling there, you still have to celebrate 2 days. And so it has all sorts of ramifications, because if you're Orthodox and you're celebrating and you have 2 days of holiday, what that means is for those 2 days, you can't turn on fire, right? It's like your Shomer Shabbat, you can't drive. You can't use money. You basically, it's a holiday with all the holiday trimmings. That's how you would celebrate a holiday. So while the rest of Israel, after 1 day, is running around to national parks and going to the beach and doing all sorts of things, they can't. If the rabbi tells them that, even though you're traveling. Others, of course, are like, I only want to have 1 day of holiday so I can enjoy, many more days. So yeah, it's as clear as mud. Basically.
Okay, well, I guess we will say goodbye for now and see you in a couple weeks.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks, exactly.
Yeah.
And thanks again, guys, for joining.
Okay, enjoyed seeing all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Elisa.
Thanks, Susan. It was great seeing you.
Good Passover.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcia. Thank you. And
Thanks.
Uncle Henry, thanks for joining. I can't hear it. Wait, let me unmute you. Well, I can't unmute you. You have to unmute yourself.
Uncle Henry Leopold.
Yeah,
Sam.
it's my dad's brother.
Oh, how great.
There
Is
you
he
go.
in the States or in Israel?
He's in Michigan. Uncle
Oh.
Henry, Uncle Hungry. Hi, guys. How are you? How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I hope you liked it. I'm so glad you joined.
Very, very learning. It's always
Good.
good. You never think you know enough.
You know what? I agree. That's what I say. I always learn from these sessions.
Yeah.
Have you spoken to my dad lately?
I spoke to him last night. I'm supposed to call him today.
Yeah.
I think he's over at our daughter celebrating.
Uh-huh. I'm coming in next month.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's been a long time.
Yeah. You're always welcome. You know that.
Yeah, you look good.
Thank you.
How you feeling? Good?
Pretty good.
Good. Any of the girls there? Wendy or Ronnie?
Everybody's here. They're coming. The boys are coming on Saturday,
Oh, nice. For Passover. You gonna have the Seder?
of course.
Yeah, it's great.
I have a Seder Saturday, and all kinds of things will happen. The boys are doing well, and they had dinner with each other last night, and they're making out very well.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
You're having a Seder, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to some friends. But the kids are all gonna come home and they'll be here for a few days and it's always nice, so.
You
looking
don't
forward
have-
to it.
You don't have your own?
No, we're not having our own this year. We were invited out, which is fine, which is good. I'll be cooking the rest of the week though. They don't get off the hook so easily. They'll all be around wanting to eat, so that's good.
We're doing a whole thing. They took over our house
Yeah,
because they're remodeling their house at the present time. They're adding a room downstairs.
hmm
So I said, well, as long as you're adding a room, have it over here. We can have the whole thing.
great. That's great.
They're out getting all the supplies and they're gonna bring everything over and we're gonna have a nice big Seder.
That'll be really nice. Really nice. Yeah. Whoa, hey, Itamar just joined. It's over.
Yeah, I thought I will make it, but they took their time.
I said goodbye. I said Chag Sameach on your behalf.
Thanks. Couldn't make it.
What's coming up next Sunday? Is there a meeting or not?
Next Sunday, I'm not gonna do one. We'll take a week
Saturday.
off because of the holiday, and then we'll start the next week with a special Easter program on the last days of Jesus. It should be very interesting.
That's why it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah,
Are you-
so,
Are you running out of lands to visit?
pardon me?
Are you running out of land to visit? Still got places to- you still
No,
got
there's
places
always,
to-
there's always more to see. It's endless.
We'll wait for the next great big discovery, and you have enough to do in here.
What's their latest discovery? Actually, they've just discovered some stuff in, like some more scrolls, right, Itamar?
Yeah.
They just discovered some
Yes,
scrolls.
yeah. In Greek also,
Yeah,
translation of it in Greek.
yeah.
So how was it?
I think it was good.
Yeah.
I think it was good. Yeah,
Did you have a toast?
I had a toast. I was the only one who was drinking, but I had a toast. No, it was nice.
Okay.
No, it was
Wow.
nice.
I
I'm
hope I
gonna say
will make it to
goodnight.
see.
I wish you all a happy holiday
Thank you, Uncle Henry. You too.
and
Send my love to everybody.
take care of yourself and each other.
Thanks. Yeah.
All the best.
Mwah.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
When are you
Bye,
coming
Lisa.
here, Lisa?
Bye, Henry.
Bye.
When will you be here, Lisa?
Oh, I'm coming on the 22nd of April.
Around the corner. So
Yeah, and I'll be there for 2 weeks.
you're gonna stay for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while,
You bringing anybody with you?
No, not really. I'd love to bring Zoe, but she still has another 2 months left in the army, and then she'll come.
Yeah.
And then Tally wants to come in the summer, so I think there'll be a progression of different moeds that will be coming.
Is she gonna come and visit Michigan?
She, at this point, no, I think at this point, everybody's going to New York, but it's hard to say with Tally because she may be traveling. Or maybe she'll do more traveling. I think she's gonna come with her boyfriend so she can introduce him to everybody.
You're gonna be mother-in-law.
Well, you never know. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. It's been 3 years. Doesn't seem like she's in much of a rush, but it's all good. She's happy.
You happy with everybody?
Yeah, no, she's happy. She's happy and it's good. We moved. We live up in the Galilee now.
In your own house now.
Finally, after 15 years, yeah.
You still got your place down in Florida?
Pardon?
How about the Florida place? You still?
No, we sold that like 6 years ago. And then that was how we could buy this one.
Mhm. Well, good
So,
luck.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you.
Chag Sameach.
See you
Bye.
soon.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.